March 14th, 2023. This is the S&P 500 E-Futures Mini 2000 tick chart on the Thinkorswim platform. You don't have to watch the entire video. You can just go down to the description below to see where I took my trades, as well as anything that any setups or anything that I thought was interesting that I kind of want to note it to myself. So there wasn't really any catalyst today, except around 5:30 was the consumer price index, kind of inflation number. Happened at 5:30, you saw this kind of crazy chop that happened, this crazy spike up, crazy spike down. It looked like it moved about 50 points, about 50, yeah, about pretty close to 50 points all the way up and then jumped around. Tomorrow, the producer price index, the PPI, will be released around the same time, so we could see some more volatility there. This is how I had my charts drawn up today. I only took one trade, and it was a winning trade. There was early morning yesterday, or actually early evening yesterday. This is a nothing trade. I was trying something out, accidentally submitted a trade, and quickly just canceled it or closed it out. But let's just go ahead and close this up. This is how I drew my chart today. At one time, I thought there was just one really strong trend line. And then later I felt there was probably another trend line here. So it's kind of like this overlapping trend line. They're both bullish, but this one just kind of tapered out. So I didn't know which one to treat as the dominant one. But at this point, I cut this guy off, and then this guy, he went a little further, and I cut him off because it was good confirmation touches, like 1, 2, 3, and also at the top, as well as this bigger guy, which kind of confirmed the beginning. If it had these overshoots, then later in the part of the day, probably right around 8:30. It started creating another trend here. Actually, I started with this guy here, the smaller one, and then it expanded out when it broke out, and I later found this guy. And then finally another trading range here. Not trading range, trading channel. So it looked like a very big N configuration, almost like an A-frame, but then it shot back up. So let's just go through the trades. It shouldn't take that long. I only took one trade today. Overall, the market was pretty choppy. This is the morning. In the AM, you don't really want to be trading this. It's pretty dangerous because in order to not get stopped out, you have to have very, very wide stop losses or no stop losses, which is always a bad idea. So prices opened. So I originally had this guy drawn initially right off the beginning of the day in the pre-market. I saw, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4 touches. This one kind of broke out, and I just kind of placed this guy up top. Confirmed up here, and it kind of confirmed over here. So I was pretty happy with this as a trading range. So prices opened, it kind of kept moving in a bullish manner. This red line is just for myself. I actually drew it much later. It was just kind of showing an invisible possible support and resistance right here. I didn't know, this wasn't here in the beginning, but I drew it later to see if it would come into play. So prices started moving. You do see some like second entries, but they're not very good high probability ones because you can count this as a new high, first entry long, second entry long. This is a bad signal bar. And I saw a bunch of these type of setups. It's very choppy, very close knit congestion throughout the day. So yes, there are second entries, but no, they're not high probability. You'd be taking a risk. I mean, it could work out. Maybe you see something that I don't. So definitely they're all over the place, but I didn't mark them simply for the fact that, if it wasn't very obvious or apparent or high probability, I tend to skip it. So you do have a new high here, first entry long, and then technically this is a second entry long when it broke up, but then, I didn't like the signal bar here, so I just, let that alone. Prices, so I'm going to skip those type of setups just because there's a lot of them, and they don't really, for the most part, mean too much. Right now, it's this channel in play, and I'm just going to put this one a little bit. I'll just change him to a dash line just to show that he comes into play, but I wasn't sure if he was the dominant one. And so right now, when this touched 3 times, I did draw this one here, and I also wasn't sure if it actually was a little bit tighter down here. But then once I saw these overshoots, I kind of dragged it all the way back up to here. So I still left this one in play, just keeping it in mind. So prices continue moving, chopping, they print. It looks like it's in this trading range now. Now again, when I drew this guy, I actually had him a little bit lower, and I treated this as an overshoot, but then later I just dragged him to the top, and also the bottom of this channel, I actually had a little bit higher till there was an overshoot here and then a clear overshoot here. Then I eventually dragged it also to the bottom. So my trend lines and trade channels, trading ranges are constantly evolving, trying to find the best fit. And I recommend anybody else doing this also kind of always adjust and tweak your trend lines, trading ranges till you find something that fits very well. Prices continue chopping, it breaks down. It's very congested here. Look at all these bars, they're pretty side by side. Continues moving. And this is where I actually saw the first setup. There's a new high, first entry long, and this second entry long. Well, it's not a second entry long yet, but it looks like it's forming. I like that this is a good signal bar, but it's not quite reliable because it's inside this bar, so it didn't have enough power to break out on either directions to give me any good determination. It did close above the EMA, and it did bounce off of this yellow line, which is the daily simple moving average. And I just want to point out that this orange line is the daily simple moving average 100, and this is the 200. So it did bounce off of there, but it wasn't enough information for me to feel comfortable taking a trade. It turns out it would have worked, but again, this is an inside bar, so it's just a little more iffy. You don't have to chase those type of trades, because other better trades will set up. And, if you take it and it worked, next time you'll think it might work and it might just come back and bite you. So that's kind of the bad habits I want to try to avoid. So prices continue moving up. And at this point, it looks like there's a trend line up here, resistance, and I just kind of put a bottom one here just to capture it, because I could have started a little later and had it actually up here, and that would have been fine as well. And I just kind of said, well, this actually works pretty well in the beginning. It's kind of going up and it's respecting it, and then it breaks through. And at that point, I kind of drew it back down to the bottom just to see if I could have no overshoot. And I had a trend channel midline here just so I could kind of get an idea of its bearish, bullish bias. This breaks down. I don't take any trades. I do see this failed second entry short forming. This is a new low. No second entry short here. First entry short comes up second entry short. Now this is worth taking, I thought, but at the time I said it closed pretty bullish, which is a good sign, but it's still a bear candle. I kind of wanted to actually touch the EMA before it rocketed back up. And it's going to potentially make a new high here because it broke out of this current channel that I had. Broke out, made one push up, made a second push up, but it hadn't tested the extreme yet, and maybe it would do it, but maybe it won't. So I just kind of sat on my hands. Turns out it would have worked. I draw this channel here just to see if actually this channel maybe I don't know if I necessarily need to draw it because it's making a new extreme because it broke out of here, but I had it there anyways. Prices continue moving up, and it kind of confirms this dotted line, this channel within a channel, or this trading range within this other trading range. So right now I'm switching gears thinking, okay, I don't know if this guy's coming into play, but it did touch here. So it looks like it's kind of creating this funky little wedge pattern. So I'm still respecting both. And I notice it's creating a trading range. It's testing, moving along, finally breaks out and goes down. I saw one potential leg down. Prices continue moving down. And then I put the second one right here as a measured move. Now this is actually where I took my one and only trade. I'll take you through the reasoning. So I saw this as a new high. It's also top of the trading range because it kind of triple tested here. Came down. You could count this as a first entry long and a second entry long, but I counted this as two clean legs down. So I said this is one leg down, first entry long, second leg down, second entry long. And I got my order ready, just thinking, okay, there might be something here. When this happened, I noticed it created this micro double bottom, touch, and when it came back, and technically you want this one to break above, but it didn't. It did close bullish, and it also created a double top. Now I like this trade because it did create two clean moves down. It's going to bounce off of this thing, which looked like it was respected pretty well, except for the small little breakout here. And so I decided, okay, well, it might actually be worthwhile trade. It's also kind of at the bottom of this trading range. So I took an entry one tick above. It is a little more riskier, but this candle wasn't too big because this candle is only about, let's see, about 2 points. So I said, okay, it's 8 ticks. I'm going to take this trade. I end up getting filled, and my runner ends up getting stopped out. but it was I was okay and happy with that trade. So then prices continue moving down, just kind of sitting and watching. Yes, there are second entries in here you could consider, but none of them set up nicely or close to a key entry point that I figured that I could find. So prices continue moving down. And at this point, I draw this, oops, this channel because it touched once, twice, three times. I like that. Once, twice, and a third time here now. So I was like, okay, this is a pretty good channel to work with. This is a trade here that I actually wish I had taken. So it's actually from here, it's a new low, first entry short, second entry short, right? However, I counted these two together because they're pretty close together. You can count this as just one big bottom, even though it's technically here. I said first entry short, and then it makes a nice clean leg again, second entry short. It also made a triple test, but I didn't think about the triple test at the time. But it also created a nice bullish candle, even though it closed bullish. It actually is a bearish candle because it didn't have enough power to keep going up, and it EMA was being pushed down. So in hindsight, I think this would have been a good trade to take. If I didn't take it one here, which is probably a wise thing, you could probably put it one tick above, one tick below this guy and hope it'll come back and pick you up. A more ambitious trade, I think, would have been like one tick below. But I think I would have been more apprehensive to put it one tick below simply because it's running against this 200-day simple moving average. Now, in price action, you don't necessarily pay attention to what's happening on the big global daily because this is the 200 simple moving average, the 100 simple moving average. But I know even if you don't follow it, there are a lot of traders out there that do follow it. They follow the VWAP, they have other kind of indicators. So to just say this doesn't matter at all, I mean, if you zoom in too much, you might discount it. But I kind of thought there's a potential it could come down here and bounce up. So I certainly wouldn't have wanted to take it one tick here. I would have put my order one tick above here. And right here, it came just enough. I think you would have gotten filled if you did have one tick below here, and then you were able to ride this down. So it's a missed trade, but I thought it was pretty good, at least good enough for a scalp. Prices continue moving down. At this point, it breaks out of this guy, right? Breaks out very deliberately, very clean. So I created a second channel here, and when it touched this bottom, I just put it right here thinking, okay, maybe there's a bigger channel and here's the midline. So maybe this part of the trading day was above for a higher part of the channel, and then now it's kind of breaking below. And I did draw this as a potential new leg down. I saw it overshoot, or in this case, an undershoot, spike right back up, create an overshoot. So I don't know if it's going to continue up to potentially touch this or potentially break back into here. But since I don't know, I just wait. I sit and I watch. It looks like it's forming something. This is where I saw, okay, it's a first entry short, because if you look at all these candles, none of them break below it till here. So that's the first time it doesn't pull back. And now it's coming back up, and there's a second entry short. Now, the second entry short, it came down, and so at that time, I wasn't sure if there was a trade there. Yes, it broke, and it's below the EMA. But I was just kind of sitting, watching. I wanted a little more price action. Then this one happened. I noticed it actually didn't break below this guy. It's an inside bar. And I said, could this potentially be a failed second entry short? This one confirms it's failed second entry short, but I still didn't like it because it's such a bullish, such a bearish momentum coming down. This is clearly, correcting now. This broke below the regular trading hour. It looks like it might have double bottomed here or just kind of tested the bottom once, but who's to say that it won't come back down to test the bottom again? So I wasn't sure if it's going to come back up or it's going to be a true failed second entry short. So I continue watching, and now I see a potential first entry long. Well, here, first entry long comes up, and then potential second entry long. But now this is just getting a little confusing because there's EMA is cutting right through. As I said, I'm not sure if it's going to go up or it's going to break down because it could try to make a second leg all the way down to test this low. Or it could be a true failed second entry short because it kind of confirmed here that this candle is pretty tiny. So in that case, I just thought, okay, it's a good signal bar, close above the EMA, but it could also be considered, if you took it at this high, first entry long, and then maybe there's a second entry long coming up. Because here it would have been first entry long, and there's already a second entry long made if you count it off of here. So all those conflicting ideas, I'm not experienced enough to, weed through that. So it just told me to sit tight. So breaks up. I said, wow, okay, it is moving. Comes back down, test, test the EMA. It's breaking well, it's breaking out of this trend channel. And this trend channel doesn't fit quite nicely. So I don't know if it's actually going to come back up and test this high. So it just tells me, just sit on your hands. You don't know. So just wait. Prices continue chopping. Now it's just kind of sitting on top of the EMA. Now it comes up and it looks like it's going to touch here. It's confirming this. I'm wondering if it's going to bounce down or break through. It turns out bouncing down. So it kind of confirms that this is a trend resistance. And who knows what this one is, but I just have it down here. But certainly, if you extended this guy outwards, I felt like this wasn't quite necessary out here because it followed really closely here. To say this is breakout and comes back in, look at this move. It's so huge compared to the width of this channel. So I just kind of cut the channel off here and then treated it as a big one here. And then I just kind of drew smaller trend channels. And then here's going into a trading range. Again, it's just chopping left and right. And it looks like it's breaking down further. Now it's going all the way down. Now this is actually that support resistance that I had here, where I said, okay, this might come into play at some time throughout the day. And it looks like maybe it was going to come into play here. So I just had that from the very beginning of the day. Again, I didn't pay attention to it till it comes back down. It looks like it might be teasing it. So it comes down. This is where I did see a visual second entry short, because you could say this first entry short, it's big move, one leg up. Second entry right here. Now, this isn't a second entry short, hasn't been confirmed yet, but EMA is holding, and it kind of, the prior history is telling the EMA is kind of a strong resistance. So I didn't take this trade just because this signal bar isn't that good. It looks pretty neutral, and it closed below the EMA for sure. It's this trading range is too early for me to accept yet, because I know there's a potential support down here, but I wasn't quite sure if the top of the channel was here or up here. So not knowing, I decided just to sit and wait. So I would have this, if this candle had formed a little bit better, I might have taken it, let's say closer to the bottom. I might have taken it because there's enough room to potentially get down to here, at least for a scalp, and maybe even go further down. But it didn't set up quite right, so I left it alone. Prices continue chopping. Now it's breaking out of the range. So I'm watching, see if it's going to have a second entry short or failed second entry long. Comes down. I kind of just drew this just to see like there's kind of a resistance here. Breaks down. I'm just watching. Here I do draw this support of the trend line, and then I put the top of the trend line here, made it into a channel. Prices continue chopping. It's kind of confirming once, twice, three times, and now it's breaking through. So this channel is actually probably too big to actually treat with too much credibility yet, because it hasn't really made a strong move up. So I'm just watching that. This one I do draw because of the first leg down. It looks like it's breaking out. I want to see if it comes back and tests below again. Comes back down, and it does. It tests below, comes crashing all the way down to this support line that I draw, and it breaks down below further. It hasn't come back to the EMA. There's all kinds of second entries you could consider, but they're not high probability. Just happen to be two pushes up, two tiny pushes up, two tiny pushes down. So it looks like it makes a new low, comes up, it's breaking out of this guy again. Jumps around, and I do see this. So I see this potential low here, first entry short, second entry short. Or you could say this is one big move up, one leg up, first entry comes down, potential second entry long, right? And maybe first entry short, and maybe a second entry short. But the way I saw this was, this could potentially be a failed second entry short, but what you have to look at it is this way. You treat this as one leg, first entry short, and then potentially second entry short. Or you can say it's a first entry long, second entry long, and it looks like that second entry long is going to continue up. And then I do see a lower high or higher low, but this isn't a very convincing setup. I don't really like how this looks because I'm not really sure it's going to reverse yet. So I left that alone, and it just kind of continues chopping. But then I do see if this is a new low, first entry short, second entry short, as soon as it broke below here. And then it is a failed second entry short now because when it broke below, this were the second entry shorts made. It doesn't confirm that it's a failure because this candle is the same body, same total length as this. But then this guy breaks down and breaks right back up. So this is a failed second entry short. And on top of that, it's a second entry short. It kind of created this triple test, if you consider it 1, 2, maybe 3, or at least a double bottom. And it looks like it's breaking out. Now the danger here is it might stop and get hit here against this potential trading range. So if I were to take this trade, I probably want to put a couple ticks back here to just reduce my risk. Turns out if I did that, I wouldn't have gotten filled and they just kind of would have ran away with me. The other thing is it's kind of holding prices. And at this point, I do have this support drawn and I could have treated it as 2 key entry points, good bullish bar. The only concern is it going to hit this invisible potential resistance? So I would have put my trade back here, wouldn't have gotten filled, and this is just one of those trades that would have worked out, but I wouldn't have been on it. So then prices just continue up, and I do see another setup here, but it's too late in the day because this at the last 5 minutes of regular trading hours, I saw a new high first entry long, second entry long, and this is a pretty decent signal bar. Well, this signal bar is not that good, but then this one looks pretty good. And had this type of setup formed earlier in the day, I might have taken it just because it looks like it's reversing now. The EMA hasn't been touched since down here. So when it's the first time it touches, there's a pretty good chance it might bounce right back. But it's only it happens so late in the day that I don't want to be a part of that. But it turns out this last 5 minutes, look at this crazy price action. This is like 12:55 Pacific Standard. Look how many candles there are in this last 5 minutes that would have clearly gotten you at least 10, 15 points just to move up. But again, you don't know that at the time. And this is a nice setup in context, but it happened too late in the day for me to feel confident taking it. So hopefully that was helpful. It was helpful for me to review this for sure.